right, family, we got to get to the NBA because the Warriors have been making a run. Warriors, you already know, they are one of the greatest dynasties in sports over the last 10 years. They've won 8 of their last 10 games. Chris Paul, he's back. Steph Curry getting buckets. Klay Thompson is getting familiar coming off the bench. So for the expert opinion, I got to bring in one of my favorites, Slick Rick the Bucher, Bay Area Slick. You know everything there is to know about basketball, particularly Golden State. Slick, what's up with it, baby?
What's happening, fam?
My
good
guy.
to be here.
Hey, it's good to see you, family. Well, let's start it off with this one. How serious, Slick, should we take the Warriors? Are they legitimate? I think right now they're sitting at the 9th seed, playing team. Are they legit, Slick? Yeah. Talk to the world. Talk to me.
Acho, if it wasn't for the producers that we have, I believe, and for Steph Curry and the Warriors and who they've been, we would not even be having this conversation. To your point, they are the 9th seed after making the run that they've made. And if you look at that run a little more closely, the only quality win in there comes back on January 30th when they beat the Philadelphia 76ers at home with Joel Embiid. After that, it's a lot of Charlotte, it's a lot of Washington, it's a lot of Philadelphia 76ers without Joel Embiid. Those type of teams. So, look, do I give them a chance? Yes, I give them a chance because they are the Golden State Warriors. But if you look at their record against the very top teams in the Western Conference, we're talking about Oklahoma City, Denver, Minnesota. Those 3 alone, they're 1-9 against those teams. You throw in the Clippers, they're 2-12. Until they demonstrate that they can beat the best teams in the Western Conference, I'm going to look at this as a very nice story. Can they make the play-in? Yes. Probably going to have to make the playoffs through the play-in. And in spite of what the Lakers did last year, I'm just not sold that this Warriors team is quite good enough to do all that and win another championship.
Slick, answer me this for a moment, because oftentimes you may have all the right ingredients in the kitchen, but you don't necessarily have the chef that can adequately prepare the meal. Do the Warriors have all of the right ingredients in the kitchen? You take Klay Thompson, you put him on the bench. Chris Paul, he's on the bench. The Warriors have the perfect chef in Steve Kerr, but do they have all the ingredients regardless of how you mix them up? Or are you saying that regardless of starting Klay, benching Klay, starting Chris, benching Cliff, are they just lacking talent?
They are lacking talent. They're lacking talent in a combination of the talent doesn't have the experience of having to play the roles that you're asking them to play. Jonathan Kuminga now has to be a central figure in this team. Can he be that as a starter on a team that's trying to win a championship? He has the talent. I don't know if he has the experience or they have the collective experience together. And that's even throwing in a Chris Paul, running your second unit with a Klay Thompson. How familiar are they going to be together? So do they have all the requisite pieces to make a run? I would say yes, but it's going to require some of the other teams in their way to have things go against them. So it's not just a matter of if they play their best, they're good enough. It's they have to play their best, and then some of the teams they have to go through, either through injury or chemistry, have to be less than their best in order for the Warriors simply to have a chance.
Well, speaking of the Warriors, Draymond Green said something very interesting about Celtics star Jayson Tatum. The Celtics, they got the best record in the NBA, and it is not particularly close. But the superstar Jayson Tatum still not getting MVP buzz that he deserves. Now, Draymond Green, he's known for doing a lot of talking, but what he had to say this time was particularly interesting. Turn up your volume and lock in. Draymond, speak up.
JT will not be taken serious for the MVP until he wins a championship. And it just hasn't been that way for everybody else, I must say. It's not that way for Joker. It's not that way for Giannis. It's not that way for Joel.
I don't agree with them. I don't agree with Draymond Green's comments. The reason I don't agree with Draymond Green's comments, Joy, Slick, Shady, is because Jayson Tatum isn't serious for MVP because he hasn't put up serious MVP caliber performances. It ain't got nothing to do with the fact that he hasn't won an NBA Finals award, because when Giannis won his first MVP, he looked like an MVP. He looked like the best player in basketball, the most dominant player in basketball, the most valuable player in basketball, however a voter deems it. And Slick Rick, I do know you to be a voter, a very credentialed NBA analyst, if I am not mistaken. When Joel Embiid finally won his MVP, it was because he had been knocking on the door for years, led the NBA in scoring 2 years in a row, didn't win it 2 years ago, finally won it last year. Go back to guys like Russell Westbrook. They did things that were statistical anomalies, average triple-doubles throughout the course of a season. So I don't agree with Draymond's comments, Slick. I don't agree with Draymond's comments, Joy, not because they're too far off base, but they're just a little bit of a lie. Jayson Tatum doesn't need to win an NBA title. He just needs to look like an MVP throughout the duration of a season. And in my estimation, and based on my eyes, I haven't seen that, Joy Taylor.
Yeah, Tatum's never received a first-place vote in MVP voting. Let's go back through the MVPs over the past 7 years. Embiid last year, you were taking it from him. He finished 4th. Tatum did. Jokic, he finished 6th the year that Jokic won his second in his back-to-back years. Jokic won it again. Giannis, Tatum finished 12th that year. Giannis, James Harden. Which of those MVPs are you taking away from those men and giving it to Jayson Tatum? None. And it's not because Jayson Tatum doesn't have a championship. It's because what Emmanuel just said. He has never played at a level that has felt like the most dominant, undisputed best player in the league. I also think that him playing alongside Jaylen Brown probably hurts him in some ways, that we consider them to be a duo that plays a lot off of each other. But the bottom line for me is I'm looking over these MVPs. Which one of them was he robbed of? I don't feel like any of them. And all of those men who won them in those years either did over-the-top spectacular things or were just so dominant that it really wasn't much of a conversation about who was going to win it. Was it Jokic or was it Embiid? Is it Embiid or is it Jokic? When we watch with our eyeballs them play the sport, when we watch Giannis, he's taking over games single-handedly. He's the catalyst for them winning. He's the most dominant player in the league. So I agree that it may help if he had a championship when we talk about these MVP conversations, but looking back on the MVPs just over the past 7 years, there's not one of them that I would say Jayson Tatum would have won it if he had had a championship in those years.
Yeah, I mean, I get what Draymond Green is trying to say, and I truly want to see more from Tatum. He's that talented. He's that special. We want to see these things in the playoffs, in the conference games, right, in the finals. We want to see that, and we have it. But I got to go back to the word of MVP.
Yeah.
Most valuable player. He hasn't been that. He's been a beast. He has good moments. He has some good games, some good runs, some good flows, but he hasn't been the most valuable player, right? I mean, what's the best attribute, would you say? Scoring? That's his best thing, scoring? He's never been top 5 in scoring in the league. That's the truth. And if you can't lead that, then why would we give you MVP? It's like Kobe Bryant, his best attribute was scoring. And he's not leading the league in scoring, and we make you MVP, it doesn't make sense. I think Tatum is a hell of a player. I just got to see more from him, and he has to dominate. If you want to be the most valuable player in basketball, go out there and do it and lead something.
Slick, you are an MVP voter, so your words have not just value, but they also have a lot of weight to them as well, because
Slick.
you're the individual who could help Jayson Tatum become an MVP. So invaluable statements that you are about to make. Do you agree with Draymond Green's comments?
No, I don't. And to be clear, I do a monthly Fox Sports MVP ladder, and I went back and checked it. The last time I did it, beginning of February, Jayson Tatum was 9th on my MVP ladder when it comes to this year and winning the MVP. And that essentially is what inspired Draymond's comments, because right now Jayson Tatum is not looked at by some as even being on the ballot or in the top 5. And why would that be an issue with Draymond? Well, because the Boston Celtics have the best record in the league, and Jayson Tatum is considered their best player, which is usually a formula that results in at least MVP status. But if we're going to go by that, Jayson Tatum's not the only one that's being overlooked. Anthony Edwards is the best player on the team with the second best record in the league, and he's not in the conversation either. And this is why, because of what you guys said, which is we watch the games. We're not just looking at statistics. We're not just looking at the win-loss records and looking at who has the best statistics on these teams. We're watching how these games are won. And when you look at how these teams play without, in the case of Boston, Jayson Tatum, or Denver plays without Nikola Jokic, or the Dallas Mavericks play without Luka Doncic, they don't win games. Now, it's a small sample size, but the Boston Celtics have played 3 games without Jayson Tatum this year. They won 2 out of the 3, including a 25 blowout of Sacramento in Sacramento. So when you have that, along with, and you guys may have thought that just because I'm not in the studio, that I don't have the capabilities, the technology.
Oh, here come a full screen.
Full screen.
Here come a
But you
full
would
screen.
be wrong.
Here come a full screen. I can tell.
Here are numbers that would suggest that Jaylen Brown's performance actually has more to do with winning and losing for the Boston Celtics than Jayson Tatum. Jayson Tatum now is a steady figure here, but when it comes to the difference between winning and losing, how Jaylen Brown shoots the ball overall, and from 3 in particular, has a much bigger effect than Jayson Tatum. So that, for me, again, what Shady referenced, like, most valuable to me is you're a difference maker with my team. Not necessarily you're the best player, but you're the most indispensable piece of my team. And based on everything that we've seen with the Celtics, they are a really great team. And you could say that Jayson Tatum is their most talented player. But are you going to say that they couldn't be a winning team without him? I'm not convinced that they would change dramatically if they didn't have Jayson Tatum.
Slick, I got a question for you, because I listen to you when you speak, and I do believe words matter. When you said Ant Edwards, you said he is their best player. When you said Jayson Tatum, you threw in one very small word. You said Jayson Tatum is considered the best player. I was like, why'd Slick add the word considered? That's weird. It's unnecessary. Can Jayson Tatum win an MVP so long as Jaylen Brown is there? Because Giannis won his MVPs before Dame Lillard showed up, so there's nobody else to steal the attention. Help me out here with Nikola Jokic, but if I'm not mistaken, Jamal Murray was recovering from an ACL injury during the first, maybe, of the Joker's MVPs, if I am not mistaken. So can Jayson Tatum win an MVP so long as there is a Jaylen Brown there that is making MVP voters have to use that word considered to preface the best player?
Yeah, again, it goes back to the eye test. And we've talked about this on the show before, but it still stands to reason that it exists, which is, who do we think has more of the killer instinct when it comes to trying to win the game? Jaylen Brown or Jayson Tatum? It's often been said, if we could take Jaylen Brown's approach and attitude and put it in Jayson Tatum, we would then have an MVP. And as long as that dichotomy exists, it's going to be really hard for Jayson Tatum to demonstrate without a shadow of a doubt that he's not only their most talented player, but he is their go-to must-have player.
I agree with that.
Joy, anything you need to see from Tatum before you can say that he is an MVP? Is there anything he can do in the postseason, or, like you've always said, it's a regular season award, so he just at least has to lead the league in scoring or clearly be the best player on the best team in basketball? Because right now he is the best player, many would say, but it is not clear.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the other part of the pushback with Draymond, right? Is like, he's going to win a championship, but it's a regular season award. So there are guys that win this that don't win championships. So it's not really even about the postseason at all. Now, we do like to see the league MVPs of any league have success in the postseason. We do feel like, as voters, as fans, as media, that sort of validates the performance of the regular season if you do have success in the postseason, because that's when it matters most, and that's when we expect stars to show up. So perhaps if he were to go on some incredible run during the postseason where we saw him be, without question, the most dominant player on this incredible team, and he is the reason, the catalyst for them winning a championship, perhaps that next year we may look at the way that they play differently. We may look at him differently. But why does all that have to happen in order for it to validate a regular season award and regular season performances? Which is why I disagree with Draymond. One is a regular season award. Two, there are plenty of guys who have not won championships who have won MVPs and will continue to do so. And there's guys that have won championships that have won MVPs and vice versa. And so what? It's really about how you play and our ability to see you be the most valuable player. Now, who should win it amongst those guys that we have at the top of this list? Of course, we debate every single year, but I don't think he's being robbed because he hasn't won a championship. I think there's a lot of factors in it, all of which we've already discussed. But yeah, it's a regular season award.
When we return, we got to transition to a little NFL. Slick, thanks for joining us. We'll get more from you here in about 15 minutes. But on the other side of this break, there's drama brewing with the Philadelphia Eagles. Apparently, the locker room was disgruntled. Nick Sirianni, the head coach, showing favoritism. The stars, they got star treatment. But how about the backups? And some are starting to speak up. Sirianni, is he out of line? Big deal, no deal for one of the biggest brands in the NFL? That's next on Speed.